Today, Ryan and I are going to give you a preview of Far, Far Out, and we're not kidding, this game is actually reaching far out to the edges of our table. This is a game from Studio Infinitus, and it is a game of space exploration. You might look at this on the table and think, oh, you got a 4X thing going on. It's not exactly that. This is more about exploration, reveal, and getting far, far out across the galaxy.
Yeah, it's kind of a sandbox space exploration game where you're going to be kind of building up your own crew, building up your own ship, and it's all driven by like a dice pool mechanic. A lot of the things that you're getting in the game, which a lot of things you'd expect, you're getting ships, you're getting crew members, you're getting items. All of those are going to give you some dice. And this is a game where you're going to start out with a little bit of dice, but as you add things to your tableau, to your ship, that dice pool is going to grow. And then a lot of the different actions you're going to take in this game are going to be controlled by the dice. You're going to be rolling these dice for a lot of different things. But before we get into that, let's talk a little bit about everything you see out here, because we do have a game that was kind of like in progress so we could show it off.
Yeah, this is a game a few rounds into progress, but at the beginning of the game, you're going to start out here with your home system. This is our galaxy. Everyone starts on Uranus, and in this sector, you're going to see a couple planets. And in fact, you're going to see these dotted lines that represent the sectors of a system. These different tiles represent those systems. You're going to be flying around using movement to not only move from sector to sector, but system to system, onto planets, off of planets, onto asteroids, off of asteroids. An asteroid might blow up and it might shove you off into another place in the sector, but you're going to be exploring to try to do a lot of the things that Ryan just mentioned. You're going to colonize, you're going to build tech sites, you're going to have encounters with alien species. You might find a different species of people to join your crew, which is a unique thing here because actually when I first heard about this game, I thought, oh, you pick your crew and that's going to be your civilization, right? Yeah. But that's not exactly the case. That's your starter one, but you might get a diverse crew along with the ship that, like Ryan said, is going to build that dice pool and sort of build your route to victory that you want to chase.
Yeah, let's talk about that a little bit, because before I explain what you're doing, I want to explain why you're doing it. And the game gives you 3 routes to victory, which are up there on 3 different tracks. There's a reputation track, an exploration track, and a wealth track. The goal of the game is either to get to 12 on one of the tracks, meaning you're very good at that, or to get 6 on all 3 tracks, meaning that you've kind of been a jack of all trades. You've done a little bit of everything to get to 6. And the game is going to reward you just for doing things that you would do in those different tracks. Like you get exploration points for exploring. You get reputation points for fighting in combat and attracting some high-level renowned crew that come and join you, build up your reputation, and you get wealth for like buying items and stuff. But the game also gives you some objectives in the form of these mission cards that are, I would kind of consider these to be your goal for like what you're doing in this sandbox, because the game gives you complete freedom to kind of go anywhere, do anything. But this is kind of going to give you a focus of like, okay, I want to try to do this. And you're going to start the game with 3 of these. You're going to choose one to be your own, and you're going to choose one to be a public one. So you always have a couple options of like what to go for, but these you're going to be like racing the other players for.
Yeah, and those objective cards become important because you have to do them eventually. Like Ryan said, you can explore new systems to get up that exploration track, but the game limits that to 3 times. You can only go up 3 spaces from doing that. Otherwise, people would just be running around exploring system after system after system. You have to look at those objectives, and some of those move you up maybe a couple, which is great. So you can really move up those. I don't know if players will more likely go for the 3 at 6 or 1 at 12. I kind of feel like the 1 at 12 seems a little bit more fitting given how much you can specialize what you're doing in your player space.
I think that's exactly the point. And it also depends on which quest you're getting. You can always come back to your home base. So we'll talk about that a little bit, because this is where you start the game. And a lot of the things you're doing in the game, you can find out in space somewhere, but you can also come back. Like Neptune is where you come to get new quests. Uranus is where you come to get new ships. Saturn is where you come to get new crew. Jupiter gives you a fight if you want to fight right off the bat. And Terra gives you the ability to get some technology cards. And again, I talked about there's a bunch of different items. There's like weird alien items, there's ancient relics, and there's tech. You'll find these all across the galaxy. All of these cards, plus the crew that you're getting, plus even the ship that you have, they're all going to determine what you're good at and even what you can do. Because literally there are 4 actions in the game, but not every ship can take every action. When you take a ship, it's going to give you some number of colored cubes. Each one of those cubes represents an action you can take. not every ship can do every action in the game.
Right, we start with a scout ship, and the green is a mining action. You can use the gray to explore. The orange or yellow is a market, and the red one is to interact. But like Ryan said, some of the ships you expand to, for instance, your miner, he doesn't have the interact action anymore.
Right.
So if you're wanting to interact with things to score your points that way, it's not going to be with a mining vessel unless you can actually try to transition over to a new ship, which is going to be something you do throughout the game. There's a number of different ships, and you kind of upgrade up to potentially this massive ship, which will actually give you more actions that you can take. But as you go up through that sort of progression tree, each of the ships beyond the scout is going to specialize in a certain area where you might not have an interaction. He has 2 mining.
Yeah.
So depending on the crew members that you have and the ship you have, you might go out with a bunch of green dice, which are particularly good for mining. So you might want to build your strategy around that until you maybe pivot to another ship. There's a lot of encounters out on the board. So you're like, oh, let's get to the battle cruiser. So I want to get into some fights and score some points that way.
Yeah, and each of these dice is going to give you some kind of benefit. They're used for different things. Like David just alluded to, the green dice are used primarily for mining. You've got these gray dice that could be used to dig for relics, and you're going to be rolling these in battle. You're going to be rolling them all the time, and the goal is to either like maybe roll specific numbers, but also each one of these dice has a different facing, and these facings all do different things. You're going to primarily get these colored dice from your crew. Your crew also give you some abilities. Your cards that you get will also give you abilities. A lot of those abilities are going to mitigate dice, give you rerolls, allow you to change the faces. So based on what you're building, it's going to kind of tell you what you're good at. David alluded to the green action, which is mining. A lot of these actions can do multiple things, but that is going to let you go to asteroids. You're going to get the ERG, which is your primary credits, or you're going to get plutonium or uranium, which you can buy and sell and turn in. So there's, a valid strategy of just being heavy in the mining truck the whole time. But like you just said, I lose the interact action, which the interact action is what lets you build out your colonies or tech sites on these different planets, which that's its own way to score points. You could just build a bunch of colonies to win the game.
Yeah, and regardless of what abilities you have, or regardless about what actions you have, the actions themselves work in an interesting fashion because you can use the corresponding colored cube to take a certain category of action like we just discussed, or you can use any of those cubes for movement. And each ship is going to have a movement value. So I could use my mining cube, for instance, to move as part of my turn. When I do that, this ship can move twice. So I've got 2 movement points to use. Movement, like I said earlier, is not only going to be from sector to sector, but it's when you want to land on a planet, when you want to leave a planet, all sorts of things. So it's fairly granular. So there may be turns where you want to get back to sort of that home base, and you're spending a ton of your cubes just to move back there because that is how the ships work. Unless, of course, you have a ship that moves a little further, or potentially that giant ship where you can take 5 actions. But it introduces some interesting situations because you might want to plan a turn where you're like, okay, I'm going to explore, but if you use that explore cube to move, you're not exploring this turn.
Sure.
Then the cubes all reset before your next turn. But you want to be careful and really think through, okay, here's what I want to do on my turn. It's going to involve this movement. And a lot of these actions kind of go hand in hand where you're moving onto a planet, but you might want to scan it as well. So you might want to have that gray cube when you use another cube to land on a planet so you can scan that planet before you land there.
Right. There's a lot of synergies in the different actions. Like scanning a planet is one of the big ones. Whenever you land on a planet, you're going to flip that planet over, and these planets are going to give you access to a variety of different icons. They could be places to get new crew. They could be dig sites to get relics. They could be places to buy and sell your items. There's a huge variety, but they're also going to come with encounters that you can fight, and you can use your explore action to scan a planet, see what the encounter is. Every time you land on a planet, you're drawing a little planet landing card that's either going to give you maybe a bonus if you've already scanned the planet. So there's a lot of different things you can do with these actions. And again, when you're kind of building those colonies, you can use an orange market cube to invest in it. So they do work hand in hand. And when you're looking at your thing, you're saying, okay, well, I do have a couple reds and a couple oranges. I could do this build a colony and invest in an action together a couple times. Or I have a bunch of grays or whites so I can land and explore. Or I can explore new systems, which that I think is a big hook in the game, is that feeling of exploring a new system, flipping over one of those giant new system tiles and seeing everything that it could be a lot of things, or it could be very few things.
Well, and the very few things are even interesting because before we played this, we didn't really look through all of the system tiles to see what was there. But when we flip this, there's a few things going on here. One, there's these anomalies, which all come with these anomaly tokens. You put them out there. When you land there, you're going to flip it over and basically do whatever that is. Sometimes it could just be a bonus. Sometimes it will introduce an event. Sometimes it might even introduce a black hole.
Yeah.
Once black holes start popping up, you can start zipping around the entire system and the entire board with a little bit more ease, so you're not using all those movement points. But the other thing to note here is this is one giant sector.
Sure,
So
that's true.
the movement that you're going to be spending here, you don't have to move from this sector, then onto this anomaly. You're literally just like, I'll move on to this anomaly. Okay, now I'm moving off and onto this one. So you can actually hit a lot of these spaces, which is kind of appealing. I went there and I was like, oh, I'm just going to tap this out before Ryan can take a turn to get over here. Because some of those things can be good. Some of those can be not so good. You know, even when you land on an asteroid, which you're going to often do to try to mine. You want that energy, but some of those asteroids will give you plutonium or uranium.
Yep.
But sometimes, depending on how you roll, those asteroids could blow up, meaning
Mine it too hard.
they're not there anymore. Not to mention, if you don't, it's going to deplete your shields, and you won't be able to mine again unless you get your shields back up. So there's a lot involved in getting through this game and navigating it, but it is a big sandbox that puts a lot of options in front of you.
Yeah, I think that explore action, I can't emphasize that enough. I mean, it does give you some exploration points, but also that's how you're going to progress on all of these different quests you have, because you might be looking for, it might say colonize on an ice planet, and there's a little thing over here for ice planets, but nobody's found one, and you're exploring new systems, flipping it over. Finally, somebody does. They flip over an ice planet, but it's all the way over there, and you're like, shoot, now I got to change my whole plan because I really need to get to the ice planet. Like I said earlier in the video, these quests are probably going to be what defines your goals, and you can get more of these. You can return to Neptune, you can get some more. There are two types. There are like smaller outpost quests and bigger like global quests that you can have access to. These are going to be, especially if you're trying to get to 12, I think you're going to need to do many of these to get to 12. And so you're always looking for the board. Some of these like things like the dig sites to get these special relics, or even to get like these weird alien tech. A lot of that is hidden on the planets, and planets are put out face down. So you don't know what it is until somebody actually goes to that planet and either just lands on it or scans it. That's when it actually flips over. That's when it actually gets its encounter card, which, by the way, you will have to encounter these encounters at some point in the game.
Yeah, at some point, but it is a player decision. These encounters aren't things that you have to deal with. An encounter will never be thrust on you and then you're rolling dice and fighting when you're not prepared. The way the encounters work is they'll come out, you can interact with them. You might have to interact with them if you want to colonize that planet,
Sure.
if you want to build a tech site on that planet. But in most cases, people are just going to choose to do so to progress maybe on an objective or to get whatever that encounter offers. But it is up to you. And we won't go into the details of how that works, but it is rolling dice. Now, it's not as simple as I roll dice and then the NPC rolls dice. Whoever wins, wins. Whoever loses, loses. It's kind of a slower process where you're going to check to see who won effectively that round of combat. And then the loser is going to lose either a shield or one of their dice of their choice, then roll again. So there's always a chance that the person with fewer dice might actually have a better round than the person with more dice, depending on how they're rolled. So it kind of just is this battle of attrition until someone has nothing left and they are the loser. But even then, it's not a super painful loss.
No, you don't lose. If you lose against the NPC, you've lost your action and you didn't get the reputation or the rewards for defeating it. You can fight other players if that's the way you want to go. You can do PvP. You're stealing energy from them or ERG from them if that's, if you win that battle. It's again, losing, that's not the end of the world. But that whole concept of like, do I want to fight? You might not be tooled for fighting. You could be in a situation where you have a lot of dice. And I mentioned earlier that both your dice and crew and even these cards give you abilities, but they might give you abilities for mining. They might give you abilities for colonizing. They might not give you abilities that are good at fighting, in which case you're like, I'm just not going to fight in this game. And I think that like by the end of the game, especially if you've got 4 players at the table, you're going to see vastly different setups with different ships, different crew, different items. People are going to be doing different strategies. And ideally, I think people are going to be in very different places on those 3 different tracks based on the strategy that they've chosen to employ this game.
Yeah, I think at the end of the game, like Ryan said, you'll see a very different setup with different players. I mean, some players might even choose, I'm going to try to play this whole game with a scout.
Yeah, save
mean,
the money. Don't buy the bigger ships.
I
Yeah.
may not advise that because there are going to be some times where you like get up a little bit with the scout. You could probably ride the scout for quite some time, but then maybe you want to specialize in one thing and try to go hard on that. But you can do whatever you want. It really sort of underlines the sandbox nature of this, not to mention the fact that you kind of make up for it with some of the crew you can get, keeping in mind that, for instance, the scout can only have 2 crew.
Sure.
So you can't build up a significant tableau of situations or a significant dice pool with a ship that only can have 2
Unless
crew.
you get a bunch of items and
Unless
stuff that
you
have
get some
dice
other
added.
items.
Yeah.
There are going to be some moments in this game where you flip over a card for the first time and you're like, oh, that's kind of cool. Like it's gives you some flavor and some variety and allows you to do some things that you might have thought, oh, I need to get a crew member or maybe upgrade my ship, but then you get a relic and you're like, oh, I've got a gray dice from this?
Yeah, I don't
That's
even
cool.
need to get a great crew now. I got a great die. And I think that's all part of that exploration-y feel of the game. I mean, it's far, far out. Like that's the goal. It's like,
Yes.
how far out can you go? How much exploration can you do? Because when you flip over a system, you're getting a lot of new information, but those planets come face down. Those planets need to be flipped over, and you're going to have access to a bunch of different icons. When you buy crew, you're going to flip over new crew. When you get items, you're going to flip over new items. So every time you do most of the actions, you are kind of exploring something, or you're getting that reveal basically every turn.
Yeah, that is definitely the big flavor and essence of the game. If you have any questions about it, please make them in the comments below or go check out their campaign page. Also, if you want to see some gameplay, there are a couple other channels, Board Game Co. and I think Dice Tower are going to have some playthroughs of the game. So check those out as well. But if you have any questions about the game or this preview, please make them in the comments below. We'll get down there, answer everything we can. Until next time, though, make sure everyone has fun at the table, and we'll see you then.